Joining us now is Dr. Chris Stansbury, and we're going to talk a little bit about the Paycheck Protection Program, PPP, and it's been a lifeline for those small businesses that can get it. A lot of the money got taken out by big business, public companies that never should have been in the program, but they got their lobbyists running around Washington, big money lobbyists that got the money in. But having said that, it is what it is. An additional $250 billion is going to be signed by the president today. That money is going to be made available immediately for those in line. And joining us now is Dr. Stansbury. Dr. Stansbury, good to have you with us, sir.
Hey, John. Thanks for having me, buddy.
All right. Now, you're in West Virginia. A lot of us look at the numbers in West Virginia, Dr. Stansbury, and say, why are you guys shut down? Not a lot of cases, got plenty of beds, got plenty of ventilators, not that many people have died. What's the deal?
Well, we're blessed with geography here. Some people see it as a challenge, but when it comes to a pandemic, a communicable disease, geography really helps us here in West Virginia. We've been social distancing since 1863, so we're just good at that. So I think that's really helped our numbers. Governor Justice jumped on it early. He began to get the social distancing and everything out there quickly. So I think, we're lagging behind, but I don't think we're ever going to peak as high as they originally projected.
No, I don't think so either. I'm going to Georgia next week. Governor Brian Kemp opening up the state for just about everything except bars and concert venues and nightclubs, everything else open, leaving it to Georgians to figure out how to implement it so there's no guidelines. You know what was funny is I've told this story. This is going to be the third time, so I'm just going to take a minute of your time. But I'm going to Georgia next week. There's a friend of mine who's a mayor of one of the cities there called Roswell, Georgia, Lori Henry, friend of mine for 3 decades. Got to be mayor, love her to death, family knows her. So she's going to be on my show Tuesday. She gets on CNN and she's like, well, I'm very upset by this because, the government has not given us any open guidelines. And I'm thinking to myself, okay, so what we're not going to go outside until the Central Planning Committee of the KGB in Atlanta or Washington, gives you guidelines? What happened to American ingenuity, liberty, free thinking? What happened to that? Is that all gone now? We have to wait for government guidelines?
Well, it makes you wonder. We do have an independent spirit here in West Virginia and in America, and we've had that since our founding. And you wonder sometimes when a crisis like this emerges how we begin to turn back to government for all our solutions. But it wasn't government that got us to where we are. It was American know-how and hard work and perseverance that got us to where we are today. And I think that's the type of spirit we need to rely on to get us through this crisis.
I don't think there's any doubt about it. All right, so tell us about your practice. And you applied for the PPP. You got it. What kind of a difference did that make to your business, Dr. Stansbury?
So we started out, John, in 2011 with 2 doctors, myself and my partner, and 1 employee and no patients. We opened cold. We've been blessed. We've grown a lot over the last 9 years. In February, we celebrated our 9th anniversary with 7 doctors, 7 locations, and almost 60 employees. So we were rejoicing that fact. And then in March, we had to shut most of it down. So talk about a paradigm shift. Never in my life did I imagine that we would face something that's such as this. Obviously, we rely on reimbursements from insurance companies for the predominance of our business. And if we're not seeing patients, those reimbursements dry up pretty quickly. So we were really scratching our heads and we were in quite a conundrum wondering where we were going to get the money to keep our business afloat until we could reopen fully. So thankfully, President Trump was able to sign the CARES Act into law. And once we heard about the PPP, we immediately contacted our local bank. We bank with BB&T, Truist, and our banker there basically walked us through the whole process. She said, listen, this is what you need to have in order. Make sure you got all this stuff ready by April 3rd, and then hit the button as soon as it goes live. And we bounced applications back and forth a couple of times, had to fix a few things, but ultimately on Thursday last week, we were able to get our funds, and it's been a blessing since then. We've been able to pay rent and pay utilities and bring some of our employees back and get geared up for the reopening of the economy so we can hit the ground running.
So 75% of the loan that you got from the PPP has to go towards payroll. So if you furloughed your employees, which you did obviously because you didn't need them, what happens? Like did you bring them back? What about the ones that went on unemployment that were maybe making more money on unemployment? Walk us through, Dr. Stansbury, how that worked for you.
So we're still seeing patients only on an emergent basis. So our doctors rotate through the practice at one of our locations every week. And so we had to keep a skeleton crew on to make sure that was going smoothly. And then we had a couple of our billers still working old claims, trying to keep some money coming in. So we had a crew of about 10 or so still on staff. And then, unfortunately, everybody else had to be furloughed. We have begun to bring those people back, though. We're kind of doing it in a stepwise fashion as we prepare for, again, a full reopening. So we're trying to bring back those people that we know are going to help to get things reorganized, because our business is going to change, from here on out. The way we do things is going to be a little bit different. Mm-hmm. So we're bringing those folks back that we know that can help reorganize things and create efficiencies. And then ultimately, once we know the official date when we can begin to see routine patients, we'll begin to call everybody else back.
So any pushback so far from some of the employees that you called back? Were they happy to get back to work?
The majority of our patients the majority of our employees are tickled to have jobs still and are happy to come back. But I understand, there's certainly some confliction there, because they're making more money with the unemployment and their $600 a week added benefit there than they were working for us. So, they're conflicted. Obviously, they want to keep their job and they have loyalty to us and the company. But at the same time, their financial obligations don't disappear because of the shutdown, and they're thinking about, keeping their bills paid and everything else. So it's a conflict, and I hate that they're in that situation. I'm grateful that they're loyal and they're willing to come back, but it's tough.
Well, it is a little bit odd when you're competing with stay-at-home unemployment. You're competing with the federal government to pay people to do nothing, then come back to work. We've heard these stories circulating about. Of course, a lot of people are coming back anyway, even though maybe they might not make much money in the short term, but they know that, come August, the unemployment runs out, right?
Right.
And so they have to have a job, and you're afraid you're going to get passed over. So best get back to work and do the right thing for yourself, which is a longer-term strategy. You're on the John Fredericks Radio Network, Trucking the Truth across America. We're with Dr. Chris Stansbury. He owns a medical practice in West Virginia. He was a recipient of the PPP loan meant for small businesses like Dr. Stansbury's. We're going to get a little bit of a feel of how that has helped him and what he thinks about some of the bigger companies that shouldn't have gotten it that did. So without this loan, Doctor, what would have happened to your practice?
Well, there was great uncertainty. I mean, again, the bills didn't stop coming in, but the revenue obviously was drying up pretty quickly. So ultimately, we would have had to begin to contract. We've been blessed with a lot of growth over the last 9 years, but ultimately we may have had to shut down locations and begin to start cutting expenses in order to go into survival mode. So we're blessed that the money came in and that, again, we were able to keep everything going and be poised for the recovery.
What do you think of, the PPP was designed for small business owners like yourself to pay their employees and keep going and get through this. And obviously demand is down. You can't take the volume anywhere near the volume of patients you had. So your revenue is way down. This is the purpose of it. What did you think about public companies? There was language lobbied into the bill allowing public companies that have access to all sorts of credit to get these funds. How did you react to that when you were made aware of it?
It was really disappointing. I have a lot of friends in the community that are small business owners. We all stick together, and unfortunately, they did not get their money, before it dried up. And then to hear that some of these major companies took advantage of it and got a disproportionately large share of the money was extremely disappointing. Because again, you're right; they've got streams of credit that they can pull from and keep their businesses going, but these little guys and gals don't.
Well, I thought it was sickening that this passed with that language in it that allowed a publicly traded company. And a lot of these companies have well over 500 employees, but they partition it out. So they took advantage of this basically by creating other business entities along regional lines that kept them under the minimum. And also then there was a maximum of $10 million. So if you create 5 entities across the United States, you can get $50 million. The maximum was supposed to be 10. I mean, the way they manipulated the system with some of the bigger banks on Wall Street is shameful. J.P. Morgan, as usual, and the other gangster bankers on Wall Street behind it. Then we find out we've got major universities, Dr. Stansbury, with billions and billions of dollars of endowments, like right here in Virginia, your neighbor, UVA, got $12 million. They've got $19 billion in endowments. Harvard gets $9 million. They've got $47 billion in endowments. I mean, you look at this stuff, and like you say, you've got people on the street, on the Main Street, that have 3 employees trying to pay their phone bill. They ran out of money, and then you say UVA got 12 million, Harvard got 9 million. I mean, I could go on and on and on. It's just disgusting.
It is, and it's disappointing that the system was set up to the point that they could take advantage of that. We've got a lot of small schools and colleges here in West Virginia who are just barely hanging on.
Right.
And to know that these other major universities have these massive endowments, yet they were still getting these big cash influxes from the CARES Act is so disappointing. So I do think that some of the shine has been lost on it. Ultimately, we're going to see a lot of businesses saved through the PPP, and I'm so glad that Congress was able to come to a consensus, and President Trump's going to be able to sign a reauthorization of this plan because, again, there's a lot of people hurting that need that same lifeline that we got.
Yeah, and I've asked several congressmen who have been on my show whether or not they had carved this language out of there, and none of them I asked was really sure about it. This was yesterday. I don't know what happened, after they got on the floor and voted for it. But I asked 3 congressmen. They were like, I'm not really sure. Rubio was asked about it in the Senate. He was vague on it. The majority of it is going to the right people. It's unfortunate that we had these things. But I got to tell you, I will never eat at Ruth Chris Steakhouse again for the rest of my life. There is zero chance I will do that. And then, Dr. Stansbury, after catching all kinds of flack and movements to not eat there again, this goes on for 5 days, and then they say, well, we'll pay it back now. So that's like robbing a bank, getting caught, and then saying, oh, I'll give the money back. No problem. It's unbelievable.
Yeah, when the tide of public opinion turns against them, all of a sudden it's like, oh, hey, you know what? We can live without this. Yeah, we'll just give it back.
Unbelievable. Dr. Chris Stansbury, I want to thank you. Also a member of the Job Creators Network. I want to thank the Job Creators Network for putting us together. Go to jobcreatorsnetwork.com. If you're not a member, be a member now. They are the #1 voice and advocate for small businesses. Go to jobcreatorsnetwork.com. Dr. Stansbury, thanks for being with us.
Thanks so much for having me, John. Take care and stay well, my friend.